Inside of a credit coaching business, it's really important that you understand your numbers if you ever want to hit big revenue months. So in this video, I'll show you what numbers actually matter, how to track them, and what you should be striving for. So let's dive in. So to understand the KPIs, we first have to understand the business setup and how it all fits together. So for us to actually get a client, we first have to attract attention and generate new leads. We need to build trust with these leads and nurture them. We then encourage them to book a call. Hopefully they show up, and then we actually close the deal. So if we were to not understand the KPIs in our business, but we start to struggle with high cost to get a client or low booked rates, and we're not actually closing a lot of deals, well, if we don't have the KPIs put together, we wouldn't really know which part of the process is broken. So you're going to be guessing your way through improving your business. Instead, if we're able to really hone in on each part of the process, we can know exactly what's affecting our results the most and focus on that. So for example, if we're not generating a lot of leads, well, we probably have to focus on the ads. If we're not attracting a lot of quality leads, well, we probably have to focus on the ads. If we're not getting a lot of booked calls, well, we probably have to focus more on our trust building process and our nurture sequence. If we're not getting a lot of people to actually show up to the calls, then we have to focus on our pre-call warm-up sequence with the SMS and the emails, the sales copy. If we're not getting a lot of closed deals, well, we have to probably improve our sales process. So basically, by understanding everything and breaking it down to the numbers, now we can run it as a scientist and really improve the systems one by one, so that if we improve this number, it's going to improve the entire funnel itself, so we can close more clients at lower prices. And then we also can do this entire process for our actual fulfillment as well. So if you're a funding coach, for example, well, whenever we generate a new client, we first have to then put them most likely through optimization, which is going to take some time. And then we can start the funding applications, hopefully get a lot of funding, hopefully mostly approvals. So we can improve this process by actually tracking the KPIs as well. So for optimization, how long does it take for us to actually get someone ready for funding? For funding, how much funding are we actually getting approved for? How many applications does it take per bank to actually get that funding amount? And then if you want to also improve your LTV per client, we can also focus on the upsell, resell, and refer, so we can also improve that number. But basically, by tracking everything in your business, again, we can become a scientist. We know exactly what's working that we can basically keep running, and what's broken that we need to fix and improve on. So let's first go over the actual running of the business through the marketing side of things. So this is my marketing master tracker right here that we use to really hone in on our results, to book more calls, generate more deals, and keep growing the business every single month. So we can kind of see how it's structured as a funnel, but more of like a horizontal funnel in this case, right? But it goes top to bottom. So we're going to be generating leads right here. We're going to be nurturing these leads and booking calls. And then here we're going to be closing the deal. So everything is going to relate to the ad spend. So ad spend is going to be the real driver of our business, because this is what's going to get us more new leads. We're going to be able to use the ad spend to nurture these leads. So although we might have some organic prospects opting in and booking calls, it's still all going to relate to the ad spend, because some of these prospects might opt in, but they might finally book a call because they're getting retargeted, for example. So really, I just treat organic as cherry on top. If someone ends up booking a call from my YouTube or from my shorts, that's great. But really, I still drive all the KPIs to my business and relate it to the ad spend. So the ad spend in our case is going to be used to generate new attention on the short form platforms, so Instagram or Facebook. So here are ideally going to be generating new followers every single day. And then these new followers, ideally want them to be quality followers as well. If you're having a tough time with your sales calls because a lot of people are unqualified, well, it's going to relate to potentially the top of your funnel. Again, we have to break everything down, because everything's going to relate to the next part as well. So if we're attracting poor quality leads, well, we're going to have poor opt-ins from people that don't really matter. They're going to be booking calls, probably not showing up, and we're not going to be closing deals. So that's why we really need to hone every part of the process in, and it all works together. So for the lead generation side of things, ideally, we want to get new followers for under $5, but if you're around 5 to 10, that's okay. But over $10, that means that you're having some kind of an issue with attention on your ad. You need to make it more visually attractive. You need to have a better hook, make it more interesting with a different background or maybe a cool picture better sales copy. So now you can attract more followers, but also the quality followers. So this is going to relate to basically your messaging. So maybe you're getting attention, you're getting new followers, you're getting new leads, but we're getting them from the wrong people. So in this case, you need to really hone in better on your messaging. You might be speaking to something that's a little bit too broad and generic, so now everyone's opting in. Maybe you're basically speaking to the wrong challenges and you're attracting the wrong fit people. So this is going to relate more to your messaging. This is more about attention right here. So ideally, you want to be over 30%. How do we know they're actually quality? Well, if you're getting new followers on Instagram, simply go to their profile and see if they have the description or the profile that we're looking for. If it's on any other platform, just go and check them out a little bit. You can see my virtual assistant does a lot of this as well, as far as the managing and actually populating this board, but you can very quickly go in and track this yourself. But it's very important to actually know each part of the process. So now we can track basically the cost per follower. Ideally, we want this number to be as low as possible and this number as high as possible as far as quality numbers. And then we have the opt-ins. So now basically people are just checking us out, but we now want them to actually raise their hand and engage with us and let us know that they're ready to take that next step. So with the opt-ins, here we're going to be using lead magnets or a community to now get people to opt in and give us their contact information. So in this case, we want to get as many opt-ins as possible for the lowest cost. So we use ad spend here as well to not only get new leads, but also retarget these leads to get a lot of opt-ins. And that's where we get a lot of results, because you can get really low cost opt-ins if you first, of course, get enough leads and quality leads. But then by retargeting them appropriately, even for just $20 to $30 a day, you can get quite a few opt-ins here, which is going to drive everything else in your funnel. So in this case, we want to get the cost to connect or opt in as low as possible. Ideally under $7. We've gotten really good at this process. We're closer to $4 in my business. But if you're over $15, you're going to be missing something. In this case, it might be your ad or it might be your landing page. So people are basically clicking on your ad, but they're not actually opting in. So that's what you might be missing on this number. And then once they actually opt in, on this opt-in page for the thank you page, we're going to have a prompt for them to actually book in. We're going to have some email drip sequence that's going to prompt them to also book a call. So that's why it's very important that we really use this in my funnel to generate a lot of attention on my offer. So now we're going to be tracking how many calls are we actually booking. And ideally, we want to book a lot of calls at the very low cost. So ideally, you want to be booking calls, if you can, below $100, but if you're closer to 100, that's still fine. Over $200, now you have an issue with perhaps the quality of lead that you're attracting, or your offer, your messaging is just not interesting enough. You don't have a unique mechanism. You're not speaking to someone that's very specific for a niche. So now you need to improve that metric itself. So this could be affected for everything before from your funnel, but now basically by tracking the numbers, if this is a big factor affecting you, now you can try to hone in as well. For the daily strategy calls, well, now this is going to depend on how much money you spend on ads, basically. But more money, if you're close to these 100 numbers, the more money you spend, the more calls you have, and the more clients you can close. So next, we can track the actual calls itself. So we're pretty close to the actual money now itself. So we're towards the bottom of the funnel. Now we're trying to actually close the deal. So we want to book as many calls as possible, but how many people are actually qualified on these calls? How many people are actually no-showing on these calls, and how many deals are we closing? So we want to actually have as many people basically show up as possible. Ideally, we want to close the show-up rate to be as high, over 90% would be great, but really most people get above 80, which is still fine. For the actual quality rates, you want it to be as high as possible. Very, very important that the people that actually show up to your call are the people that can afford it, that can benefit from your program. And so this is going to, again, be affected by the entirety of the rest of your funnel. But for this step right here, if you were having an issue with your quality call rate, we might have to improve, again, everything before then, but also potentially narrowing down on your form, having the right qualifying questions, because when we were booking a lot of calls early 2023 in my business, we were just optimizing for as many calls as possible. But most of the calls I was hopping on were people that didn't have any money, that had really bad credit. And so I was wasting a lot of time. So it doesn't really help me by hopping on a bunch of calls with people that can't actually benefit or qualify for my program. I'm just wasting time, right? So ideally, if I'm hopping on the call with 10 people, I want to be talking to 10 people that have the money to buy and that want my program. Because if I'm hopping on 10 calls with one person that can actually qualify, well, all the other ones are a huge waste of time. So that's why we really need to dial in this process as well. For the no-shows, that's going to be affected a lot by your pre-call nurture sequence and building trust with them before they actually hop on the call. And for the closing process, this can still also benefit from the rest of your funnel if you build up a lot of trust, if you show a lot of value, if you're very unique, and then if you also have a good call, if you build good rapport, then you can close the deal. So all this to finally get more sales at the lowest cost possible. So we're actually below $800 to get a client right now, right? And your goal really is to get this as low as possible, because at this point, if we were to spend $800, we get a whole new client, which might represent, 3K cash collected or over 6,000 in revenue, right? So ideally, you want to get this number as low as possible so that now we have a very dialed in system that every time we spend $800, we get a new client, right? But that's how we understand the KPIs in our business and how to basically narrow down on what's working that we can kind of let it run, but what's also broken that we need to really test and fix. So if we're having an issue with our leads, we might need to have some better ads and some better content. If we're having an issue right here with very high cost per opt-in or very low amount of calls booked, we need to have better opt-in systems. If we are not booking that many calls, or if we're not actually getting that many shows, if we're not getting a lot of qualified, if we're not closing a lot of deals, we're having some kind of issue in this process right here. So for the client side of things, we can also track these numbers so that we can improve the client experience. So how long does it take to get results, and how good are the results themselves? So this is our data for the year of 2024. And basically, how long did it take us from the onboarding call to the funding dates? So how many days that was, and also how much funding did we get for this client? So this allows us to have a good understanding of our speed, but also of our final results. So ideally, in this case, time to fund, if you can get close to 30 days, that's pretty good. Over 60 days, you have some kind of a bottleneck in your system that you need to fix and improve on. And then the funding amount's really going to depend on the type of client that you work with on average. So if you work with online coaches and consultants, they might not need over $100,000. But if you work with real estate investors, they might want over $200,000 on average. So really optimizing this for the client that you typically work with, and then moving towards a good average results. So for our optimization process, we've actually tracked a lot of different steps that it takes to actually get a client the results. So whenever a client really had some kind of a bottleneck that they were stuck on, we would track how long they were stuck on this task. And then we would basically average everything out to see exactly what were the ones that affected us the most. So for example, adding an account or adding an authorized user, fixing their balances, or adding credit strong, which should be pretty simple, right? Then we can add the category, was the client's fault or our own? And is there a cost to potentially add a done for you element to this as well? So for Credit Strong, for example, this is a very simple process to just go and sign up for. So we can add an installment account to their profile. So in this case, what we figured out is that this was a big bottleneck for us. And so we need to improve the system. So we improved on the actual trainings. I had a more step-by-step process kind of built out. And on some of these steps, we might even add some more hand-holding. We might even do it for the clients. Like for the inquiries, for example, at one point, we also had a done-for-you inquiry element as well. But basically really getting scientific also on the client process so that we can basically break every single thing down on the optimization, understand what's going well and what isn't, and then how to improve the ones that are holding us back the most. So that's how we improved on the KPIs for the optimization time. But then for the funding amount, we basically tracked on the bank level, how many banks were approving us versus denying us. So you can kind of focus on the best banks that got us the best wins overall, and then eliminating all the ones that kind of held us back, because clients do get upset if we have a lot of denials, even though it might take a couple denials to get us to the final result. But ideally, you want to go after the big wins, the big approvals right off the bat so they're happy and they can continue the process. So that's why we're able to also track on the approvals, we track the overall funding amount, because if we're not getting a lot of funding, that's obviously a big issue. But if we're getting a lot of denials on the way there, that's also an issue. So we track exactly all that process so that we can improve the speed of actually getting ready for funding and then the final results of the funding itself, so we can improve our client experience and make it a better business. So that's how we track the numbers inside of my business, so I know exactly what's working and what isn't, so I know what to focus on and how to improve and grow my business every single month. So for the marketing, I'm tracking how many leads am I getting and how quality are those leads, how many of them are actually engaging and booking calls, and how good are we at actually closing the deal and getting more clients. Then for the clients, how fast can we go through optimization and get them ready for funding, and how good are we at actually getting the funding that they want. But I can basically pinpoint each part of the process so I know exactly what to focus on, because we're weak, how to get better, and that will allow us to then grow the business. So if you want access to the KPI tracker that I showed you inside of this video, message me on Instagram, KPI tracker, and I'll send it over. And if you want some help actually understanding your numbers so you can improve your systems and continue to grow your business, we actually have Credit Coach Academy, in which I actually give my entire business in a box to my clients. We work on each part of the process so they get better results and they hit bigger revenue numbers every single month. So if you want to learn more about that program, click on the link down below. We can hop on a call. Otherwise, I hope this video is very helpful for you and you learned something, so now you can get better progress and better results in your own business. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.